Yes, I'm Kristina Karamo, and I'm the Republican candidate for Michigan Secretary of State.
Okay, I think that's how I said it. Yay, me. Okay. So I was telling them I've only known you for like 2 years, so it's not like I should know how to actually say your name by now, I guess. Let's see. We have not as much time we could spend hours asking you all kinds of great questions. So
Yeah.
Trying to think of some of the best ones that we have today. And I apologize to our viewers. We started off on a little bit shaky technical footing today. Of course, technology is always fun, but Facebook didn't want to play nice with us in our live feed. But we're up and running on all of those, and this will also replay later. But all right, I was hoping there's a way I could minimize my screen and make yours bigger, but okay, I guess I'll just make us both bigger. So I guess I should have done my hair instead of just brushing it. Anyway, so you decided very quickly, actually, well, yes, very quickly. I will take the time to do this now, but you are not just some person, some politician, somebody who's been in politics for a long time, somebody who, has only ever worked in government, and, you have all these political connections, and it's just the next thing you want to do. I'm talking for you, I realize, but I'm on a time crunch. So rather, you are an actual person, a mother, a Christian. You, in fact, are a mother of 2. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
And they're teenagers. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Having survived 3 months. Yes, absolutely. I'm enjoying my youngest being only 8 right now. Yay. But once you get to that 18-year-old mark, you are no longer legally responsible for the choices they make. So look forward to that. Anyway, so you are in this fight because you've lived in Michigan for quite some time. And very quickly, what is your background? What is it besides running for office is it that you do?
Yeah, so I'm a college professor. I also have a master's in Christian apologetics. So actually, I was on my way going into the ministry. I finished theology school, earning my master's from Biola University in Christian apologetics in the spring of 2020. So think about that. So I would not go to theology school if my goal was to be Secretary of State. My goal was to go and spread the gospel, because fundamentally the problem in our society is not because of government. The problem in our society is hearts absent of God. That's the fundamental problem in our society. And so that's what I was really focused on, because I care about people's souls and I want to see change. And I understood that fundamentally, people I like to think about like antibiotics. People take antibiotics to get rid of the infection, but there's an underlying condition. So I was more focused on the underlying condition of our problems. However, I still was very politically active, precinct delegate, I'm on state committee, all that good stuff, a spokeswoman for my county party, because we have a responsibility to be engaged in government beyond just getting mad and voting every 2 to 4 years. That's so irresponsible of us. So I was a volunteer during the 2020 election. I was a poll challenger at the TCF Center in Detroit, and I personally witnessed illegal activity. I personally witnessed a process designed to facilitate corruption with tons of gaping holes that opened the door for corruption if one wanted to do so. And after witnessing that and coming before the Senate Oversight Committee and testifying about what I saw and just being told, thank you for sharing your story. I mean, I'm not a kindergartner and this being story time. I'm an adult. I'm a citizen. I've told you I've witnessed a crime and I want you to do something about it, and nothing was done. And one of the things that's really important is, we hear the move on crowd. Like, you guys need to move on. 2020 is over with. Why are we still talking about it? They are part of the problem. The thing about it is when someone is allowed to get away with a crime, what would stop them from doing it again? Why would we knock doors for you? Why would we campaign for you? Put money into your campaign. At the end of the day, I don't even know if my vote's going to count or not. So it's just, and beyond that, it's about we the people maintain control of our government. Our Declaration of Independence states that the government derived their just powers from the consent of the governed. How does the government give their consent? It's through the election process. So even though the other issues of Secretary of State are extremely important, making sure we have adequate services at our branch offices, bringing more local control and local say-so into our branch offices. There are 131 branch offices across Michigan. And every community has unique needs that need to be respected and considered when developing a policy for those branch offices to make sure that the needs of the citizens are met. However, the most important job of the Secretary of State is Chief Election Officer. And if we have corruption in our election systems, that is a national security threat. It is. It's a total national security threat, because why wouldn't a foreign or domestic enemy want to exploit loopholes in our election system? And then besides, you just saw, I believe it was in Genesee County, the clerk of Flint, or a city in Genesee County, I don't want to misspeak, but was just caught because she clipped ballot seals in an August primary in 2020. So, sometimes you have organized efforts like we saw with 2,000 Mules, or we'll have some individuals just decide, I'm going to break the law. None of it is accessible, and none of it is acceptable, excuse me. And then we hear the phrase, well, there was no widespread fraud. Well, how much of a crime is okay? A little bit of a crime is okay? All of this combined made me say enough. Running for Secretary of State, because it's just too much, and I'm tired of expecting other people to do what I'm capable of doing myself.
So real quick, if anybody wants to know more about where Kristina stands on some of those particular E-Day issues, I'm trying not to use words that'll get us thrown off of certain social media sites. There is a movie that has been released. I believe you can still view it, perhaps even for free, through Rumble. It's 2,000 Mules. I haven't seen it yet, but correct me if I'm wrong, Kristina, but you have seen it, and it is the you would stand behind the evidence that is talked about and the highlighting that is done throughout that of what the problems were.
I have yet to see the film. I will be seeing it soon. In fact, we're having an event. We're having a fundraiser on the 19th with the film. However, I have seen footage. And one of the particular videos that is very upsetting is that there's this woman who appears to be, and I say appears for legal reasons, but she's sitting in her car signing multiple ballots. Now, we know everybody can only cast one vote, and you can't sign for another person. So clearly this is a crime. And this woman is signing ballot after ballot after ballot after ballot after ballot after ballot. And then she goes and takes these ballots and puts them into a drop box. Well, folks, that's illegal. Not only is ballot harvesting illegal in the state of Michigan, some states, they do permit ballot harvesting, but signing for another person is illegal. You can't do that. So that is something that I've witnessed on film. So that's really not up for debate. Or the gentleman who has on a ski mask and is carrying hundreds of ballots under his arm, which is, again, the ballots are to be wrapped and protected in a particular way. Again, this is another crime. So they have surveillance footage of crimes. So that in it itself is stand behind. Now, the question becomes, how prevalent was it in Michigan? We really don't know, because we haven't had a meaningful investigation. But any amount, even if it's 10 ballots were impacted, any amount is too much, and it needs to be fixed, because it's all a threat to our republic.
Thank you. I guess my point that I wanted to let people know about is you have a lot more that you would like to say about that, but I'm afraid to let you say too much so we don't get shut down on certain social media platforms. But in general, from what you know of that movie, it would speak to a lot of the concerns that you have about what happened and what we need to do basically to move forward. Is that right? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay. So one of the other things, there's, like I said, there's just so much, but there's several parts of the Constitution I'm going to talk about with our viewers in just a little bit. I'll save that part for the end. But being a constitutional officer, meaning that the title of Secretary of State is actually written into the state constitution. And actually it's referenced in several places of the U.S. Constitution that I'll go over later. But being a constitutional officer in general, what does that have a meaning for you, or what kind of standard would that hold those particular individuals to?
The Constitution is the standard. All things should be subject to the Constitution. If an action is in any way threatening or undermining our state's Constitution and our U.S. Constitution, that's a problem. When I think of the Michigan Constitution, it starts with the all political power is inherent in the people. And part of making sure the power stays in the people is having control of our election system. And so our entire state's Constitution is filtered through that lens that political power rests within the people. And the only way we're able to exercise that is when we vote. So it is so important. And to your point, Catherine, when we get away from our constitutional responsibilities and duties and restrictions, because it's not just what the Constitution tells us to do, it's what the Constitution doesn't give us permission to do. Because I believe in the concept of negative rights, more so that the government exists to protect my rights. It's not existing to give me rights. My rights are given to me by God. And so we need people in elected office who understand that and who believe that and adhere to that, because all decisions that are being made need to be made through that lens, because if not, are going to disenfranchise the people. And we cannot open the door and allow people's constitutional rights to be eroded for political expediency. And that's the problem we're in. This is not a Democrat versus Republican fight we're in. This is someone, either people who are for the citizens or someone who's against the citizens' rights. That's what this boils down to. And so we have to have people in office who understand what the Constitution is and why it exists. That way they can adhere to it, because otherwise it just turns out to be a piece of paper. The Constitution written on paper doesn't mean anything if it's not being implemented by those who hold those offices that it lines out.
Man, I had so many follow-up questions, but it's like you and I have been hanging out for a while. Maybe like we even co-hosted a show together a while back. Yeah, exactly. It's so many of the things that you said are spot on. So I guess my thought is, Article 11, Section 1 of the Michigan State Constitution, MCL 15.151, U.S. Constitution, Article 6, all of those require that office holders take an oath of office before stepping into that role. It sounds like, although you didn't officially use the word oath, you were talking about that everything has to be done through and filtered through what is allowed by the Constitution. And by that, I guess I want to clarify, because I heard it, but just in case others are confused, what you're saying is that the Constitution doesn't give us, the government doesn't give us our rights. We have those, they're given to us by God, but the people who are in office, you use the term rights, but their ability to act or not act is given to them specifically by the words of the Constitution, right? So when you said something
Right.
about having the right to act or negative rights, that kind of thing, it's not that we have to have permission as individuals to act. It's that as office holders, people need to make sure the permission to act is given in that Constitution before they take that action. Is that
Correct?
okay?
100%.
So it's funny because I hadn't really looked at too much of this before, about a week and a half ago, when I was on a national radio show that the host was based out of California, and he wanted to talk about he wanted to talk about the first 10 amendments, and I said, your show's only 2 hours long, how are we going to do that? Needless to say, we didn't finish the full discussion, but he wanted to start at the 10th Amendment, and I said, okay, well, let's start with the 9th. And he kind of raised an eyebrow and he's like, all right, go ahead. And then through the course of that conversation, we developed the understanding that really the 9th comes first, as everybody who knows how to count understands. The 9th comes first because the 9th is focused on the rights given to us by God, all those unenumerated rights that are given to us, that we are given as individuals. They're given to us as people. We don't turn around and delegate rights. Rights are ours as inherently as being human. Then you go to the 10th Amendment, and the 10th Amendment talks about the powers. And those powers, the authority to act or not act outwardly towards others or things of that nature in society as a collective, those powers are actually reserved to the people unless we are giving them to the state through state constitutions, or we are giving them to the U.S. government by the U.S. Constitution. So state and federal governments don't ever have rights. Office holders don't ever have rights as an office holder. What they do have is they might have the authority or the power to act or to take certain action. And it might sound like a nitpicking play on words kind of thing or whatnot, but it's important to realize that rights are what God gave us. Authority is what an office holder has to do or not do something. So that kind of goes hand in hand with what everything else that you were just saying there. So Anyway, so for those who have heard me in the last couple of weeks, I wanted to clarify that that's what you meant. You weren't meaning that we answer to only, the powers or the rights given to us in the Constitution or anything. So, so what are your thoughts about, we have later on in this show, I'm going to be discussing a lot of the constitutional and constitutional amendment petitions and initiative petitions to get new state laws enacted in the state of Michigan. There's a lot going on there. I would say that the process, having been someone who drafted a constitutional amendment petition and circulated one throughout the entire state in 2020, that the process is overwhelming and it's hard to understand. And the average intelligent Michigan resident, U.S. citizen, can't really understand it without tripping up in some way, shape, or form. Would you agree that's kind of the status of being able to circulate any kind of petition in Michigan?
I think there are some rules that do make it cumbersome. It does need to be more user-friendly, and I think that it's to be something that citizens are more aware of. I mean, even recall petitions. I mean, this is something that people need to utilize a lot more once someone is in office, to be able to recall them out of office. That's something that many citizens don't even know they have, because to fundamentally even find the answers to that. I mean, something that may sound simple, but get to your point, is just the layout of the Secretary of State's website. So when citizens are trying to find that information on what to do to start a citizen's petition or a constitutional amendment or recall petition, we need to make sure that that information is more readily available to people so they can get the job done. And also the process of checking signatures, once any type of petition, a candidate is submitting signatures, there needs to be a process where people can check along the way, because I'm aware of individuals who may have hired individuals to collect signatures and they present them with bogus signatures, or there's individuals who might hide signatures. I know a woman who ran for clerk in the city, and she had some person who volunteered to collect signatures and they were doing something bogus. So we need to have a process as well for candidates to be able to verify, not just candidates, but groups who are, launching different petitions, to be able to verify signatures along the way, or they run the risk of having their petition tossed out or being their candidacy ended, because that is a big problem. We need to encourage more citizen engagement. And to your point, if the Secretary of State's office is ran per the rule of law, per the Constitution, and ran with the beginning of our state constitution saying that all political power is inherent to people, then that office would be way more friendly to the citizenry, because whether it's casting a vote or a recall petition or what have you, that office holder is critical to make sure that the people maintain control of their government. So that it needs to be a lot more user friendly and explained in a lot better fashion as well. Because some things I have legally that I have issues with, like you have to have the signature, by like 180 days and certain limitations in regards to collecting signatures. And what if it takes me a longer period of time to get signatures? Should my petition therefore be invalidated because I took too long to collect all the signatures? I understand there has to be a constraint in time, but I just think that some of these constraints really kind of disenfranchise people and don't encourage more citizen engagement. Because if the Secretary of State's office was ran with citizen first, then we would have way more citizen participation and better control over our government, because oftentimes citizens are encouraged to vote, but the second part of that equation is holding people accountable. That isn't advocated as much, and I feel that the Secretary of State has a critical role in government accountability as well.
Exactly. And I would agree that it might sound something that's, simple or silly, talking about the website, but I noticed that as soon as she took office, that website was crap. You can't really find things on there. Quite frankly, anything at michigan.gov. It's hard to find what you're looking for. Things are overly complex. And most recently, I found, especially on the Secretary of State side, there's a lot of broken links. So if you go to example, the page of the Secretary of State website where all these petitions are supposed to be, where all their links are supposed to be, you click and you get a 404 error for every single one until you get towards the bottom, and they somehow start working again, which I find very, interesting to say the least. The only place that I was able to find the actual links all connected and working was if you follow enough links to go to the Board of Law Examiners. Obviously, I'm an attorney. Board of State Canvassers portion of that site, and then at the bottom, after it talks about who they are and what they do at the bottom, then they have links to all the current petitions there. But again, that's something that the Secretary of State website should make much more easy to understand and be able to have access to. Certainly, I do appreciate that there's some links to some different PDFs and things that are on the website about different like ways to get involved as a poll worker, as a poll watcher, poll challenger, all kinds of different things. There are actually those websites, links right on the Secretary of State website. I'd say they could probably be a little bit better. But there's informational sheets that go along with that, different crimes, election crimes that they've chosen to highlight throughout the years. And I don't know if those were actually things put out by the current administration or prior years. Certainly, I would ask that if you win this election, you definitely not just take a look at the website as a whole, but each of those types of handouts, printouts, PDFs, whatever, that we're actually making sure the corrupt law is being summarized. I'm sure you're well aware that in October of 2020, Jocelyn Benson decided she was going to put out this whole broadcast telling all of the election workers across the state that it was illegal to carry a firearm into the polling places. And that was clearly not what the law said at all. And so it took a group that was actually doing, they're spot on, they're on top of it, and they were able to fight it. And I want to say that fight ended in the Michigan Court of Appeals. I want to say it was maybe a week before the election, but they were able to clarify, nope, she can't just make stuff up. She's got to go with what laws are there. But at any rate, all the more reason that, a lot of these cheat sheets and pamphlets and FAQs and things in print and on the website are essential to people having that access to government, to having that control over government, to being able to participate. So definitely people like me are going to be urging for you to make some of those changes as quickly as possible once you get in there, especially, you never know, right? A lot of people thought Trump was going to have for sure that second term, and there's a lot of questionable things that led to him not having that, but nevertheless, something similar could happen in the situation of you having a second term. So we need to make sure from day one we're able to go in there full speed ahead and make some of these changes that need to be done so we can have our constitutional republic back. So I'm glad that you're talking about all those things. You did mention having some access to the offices, and we kind of glossed over that really quick because there's so many other major points, but I think it's a big thing that, when Whitmer shut down Michigan, when governors all across the country were shutting down their states, we were losing the ability to actually go in and see these government officials appointed or elected face to face. And you lose accountability just by not having that. So I assume that when you said it, that one of your points would be to make sure those offices are open. They're open during full normal business hours, that they are functional and staffed, and that information is there for people to, be able to see what they need to see. They don't have to make appointments for 3 months out, that kind of thing. Is that basically what your stance on the whole office is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We need to have both walk-in and appointment services, because one of the problems is Jocelyn Benson is trying to push everybody to an appointment system. And then one of the issues is that, some places, they're still having backlogs. Some places are still waiting, a month or several weeks to get in. There are places, some people may say, well, my location isn't like that. There's 131 branch offices across the state. I was talking to someone recently where they have to cancel one appointment because they got an appointment at the Secretary of State. There are so many operations that was required to do in person or via mail. Just think of a handicap placard. Let's say you live in a community where your Secretary of State, it may be a week or two before you can get into that branch office and you need a handicap placard, because either you have to do it in person at a branch office or through the mail. That's unacceptable for people to have to wait that long for needed government services. And as I mentioned before, we need to have more consideration for the needs of the local community, because every community has different industries that they deal with. So some may deal with more agricultural vehicles, and some may also deal with more used car lots. So that means they're going to have a certain set of needs that branch manager is going to need to be able to accommodate instead of this centralized one-size-fits-all approach that Jocelyn Benson had. And also, people being limited to the amount of transactions they can do per appointment. But that doesn't make any sense. So we have to have both the walk-in and appointment system. I would like to see the amount of kiosks that are available expand. And I also would like to see us partnering with local businesses to provide certain services that the Secretary of State does provide. That way we can cut down on wait times. For example, renewing your registration or registering a vehicle or, things of that nature. Let's say you bought a vehicle off of another person and you want to register that vehicle while purchasing insurance. If we allow insurance agents to also provide some of those services like renewing plates, then that means that you'll have competition, which means that necessarily those businesses are going to want to service you quickly. And they may provide additional services, and that will cut down on wait times. I mean, the Secretary of State is such a bloated bureaucracy. If people want any indication of that, Secretary of State brings in $2.9 billion a year to the state of Michigan. Only 7% of that actually goes to running the Michigan Department of State. The other 93% goes into the general fund. So additionally, the Secretary of State's office has turned into a cash cow for the state of Michigan. So when you're looking at things like IRP plates or how auto dealers and auto repair facilities are being regulated, you see that there's great room for abuse in the Secretary of State's office to bring in tons of money for the state of Michigan. I mean, even the amount of money it costs to renew your vehicle, it's based on MSRP. That's totally ridiculous. Why is it based on MSRP? If I'm driving a 20-year-old Mercedes, okay, that car was not very expensive to purchase, but to register and renew my plate is expensive. So those are so many things that need to be changed. And because that the corruption in our election system is just such a massive issue, that sometimes the other issues in the Secretary of State's office get glanced over, and we can't allow that to happen. Because all of the issues are important. Like the auto dealers and auto repair facilities, they're being abused. The Secretary of State, when they go in and conduct an inspection, it really turns into an investigation where they're looking for these facilities to see if they had a violation. I'm talking about, it could be a minor clerical error, or like a comma or something missing or a zero missing. And they can leverage whatever fine they want against this business. It could be $100, it could be $2,000. It's at the complete discretion of the Secretary of State. And then they use these unconstitutional administrative courts, but there's really nothing you could do about it. There's nothing you can do to really fight back. I mean, you can make your case, but the administrative hearing, they're judge, jury, and prosecutor. They're everything. So there's lots of issues going on in the Secretary of State. I've been made aware of elder abuse being perpetrated by abuses in the notary system, for fraudulent documents being notarized. So there's so many things going wrong in the Secretary of State's office that it needs to be totally cleaned up. And this is the thing that's important for people to understand. These issues are not complicated. It takes a person of courage and character to make those remedies. So that's what it boils down to.
All right. Well, I totally appreciate all the thoroughness of your answers and the discussions that we're having. You have a website that kind of, I'm assuming, goes into a lot of detail on some of these issues. What is that website?
The website is KristinaKaramo.com, and we have launched our Money for Liberty initiative. And so we're really reaching out, asking people for their financial support because, we see that our country is on a trajectory towards tyranny. Our country is being taken over by these authoritarians who care nothing about you or I. And so it's really important for people to understand that campaigns cost a lot of money. And we get very frustrated with the political class. They're pumping up their people who only seek to serve themselves. But any amount would be so much appreciated. $5 or $5,000. It's like this. You can't get upset at the political class for funding their corrupt politicians if you're not even willing to sacrifice a cheeseburger for your liberty. So we need your financial support. If you're going to make it, we're going to make this happen. We need people all over America to support our campaign because they're pouring millions of dollars into the incumbent's campaign because the seat of the presidency comes through Michigan. And so what the leftists do is they dump money into battleground states because they know if they can take over the battleground states, then they'll control the federal government. So we need patriots all across America to support our effort to make sure that the people of Michigan actually have a say in our election process, and therefore making sure the people of America have a say who's heading to Washington. So we need your support. KristinaKaramo.com, like my name is spelled at the bottom. Kristina with a K, Karamo with a K, KristinaKaramo.com.
Yeah, that's really important. An important point that for those of you watching, not just in Michigan, especially in Michigan, but quite frankly, anywhere in the United States, or quite frankly, anywhere in the world, if you value what a constitutional republic is supposed to look like, if you value God-given liberties in any way, shape, or form, if you value what the restrictions and limitations written into the very documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, let alone the Constitution of each of the states individually, then take an interest in this race. Take an interest, quite frankly, in all the Secretary of State races that would be happening this year, the governor races, the attorney general races. Those are going to be important. And certainly, as she mentioned, the battleground states, Michigan, as we all know, even if you never have lived in Michigan, you've heard about it on election day, because it's always been one of those states that can change the outcome of an entire election. So this upcoming election is very important. And yes, there are millions of dollars being poured into the Democrat candidate campaign. But let me tell you this, I know from running for office several years back in Michigan, specifically in West Michigan, where a lot of the conservative funders or donors are located. In fact, they were in my specific district. I had to door knock in those areas, most of which were gated communities, so it was a little harder. But anyway, I know personally that the people who typically donate the big bucks to the Republican campaigns are not very likely to support Kristina, because one thing, and I don't mean this to be sarcastic or whatever, but quite frankly, she likes and understands the Constitution, and she's not easily bought out. So they're not going to be giving her large sums of money, as they should if they really valued the Republican platform and they wanted to make sure they were getting people in office that also valued that Republican platform. So when she's saying every dollar matters, it does. With 10 million people in Michigan alone, if each person gave her $5, well, that's a lot of money she could spend on a campaign. And in a lot of places, especially with, McDonald's now hiring at $15 an hour, that's going to not even cover a cheeseburger these days, but yet it can cover your share of freedom. So again, her website is her name. It is your name, right? Yourname.com.
Yeah, KristinaKaramo.com.
Okay.
Yep. And we won the endorsement. I don't know if the audience is aware, but we've won our state convention 2 weeks ago, 67% of the vote. So I am the Republican nominee, and so it's me and the Democratic opposition, and I need your support.
Absolutely. So make sure to check out her website to see how else you can help her. I'm sure, Kristina, you are also accepting volunteers through your website that might be willing to make calls, knock on doors, just tell people about you at their church, their work, their whatever. Every little bit helps. And it doesn't matter if somebody's in the big city like Detroit or if they're in a small little town like Greenville, Michigan, in the middle of nowhere. It all matters. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've done over 200 events in the primary. And so now that we're in the general, we're going to take it up a significant notch and get all over to talk to citizens across Michigan, because to your point, what we're fighting for is not a Republican versus Democrat issue. It's over what's right and what's wrong. And we're fighting for the people of Michigan. And technically, the Secretary of State's office is not a partisan office. It's really not. It's just making sure you have verifiably secure elections, making sure people have adequate service. Those are partisan concepts. It's just, this is what my tax dollars allow for, and this is what the Constitution grants me. Therefore, it's my job to protect it.
Absolutely. So make sure you guys do that. Support her in any way possible, whether you're in Michigan or not, whether you're over 18 or not, whether you're over 80 or not. This is important. And Kristina, please make sure to let me know if there's any topics that come up, or we know there's going to be a lot of mud being thrown out by the other side as the campaign goes on. So if there's ever something that you think would be helpful to discuss or answer questions for people, by all means, reach out, let me know, because I want to make sure that people are truly informed about everything relating to our government these days. It's the only way we're going to get out of this. So,
and thank you, Catherine, for having these conversations, because I personally think the media is actually even bigger than this, for the simple fact that if we had honest people in our media, the corruption we see in our government wouldn't even happen, because they would expose it and then the people would naturally fight back. So for me, technically what you're doing is even bigger, because it's getting the message out to people. So thank you for what you're doing.
My husband is saying hi to you on YouTube, so I just wanted to.
Hi. Hi.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
you.
I wish we could have you more, but you have a bunch of other stuff you got to do, and squeeze in parenting and eating normal and exercising and all that other fun stuff, right? So
Absolutely.
well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks,
I really
Catherine.
appreciate it.
Yeah, God bless. See you later.
Yes. See you later.